Hello, witchy friends. My name is Bridget Owens. If you haven't watched any of my prior videos or kind of dug into my content, I'm an author, tarot reader, tarot artist, spiritual thinker, alchemist, and I have a book coming out a week from tomorrow, so October 28th. It's called Deep Self Magic, a step-by-step roadmap to spiritual authenticity. And so I just wanted to kind of pop on live, and I'm going to do this kind of every day between now and next Thursday. Probably not this late at night, but you never know, just because of my work schedule and all that. So, but I wanted to pop on live every day for the next week or so, just to kind of give everybody a sense of what the book's about and how it came to be and what's in it. So kind of the overview, first of all, of what's going on here is that, like I said, the launch of the book is on October 28th. And we're going to be doing through my publisher, Carnelian Moon Publishing, we're going to be doing a virtual launch event. So on Zoom, streamed through Facebook, on the 28th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you are at all interested in the book, but especially the launch or any of the giveaways that are going to happen after that, go to deepselfmagic.com and sign up for the giveaways. There's a lot of information on there, a summary of the book, all of that stuff, things that you can share. So, and I mentioned giveaways. So after the promo or the launch event, starting on Thursday, I'm going to do 14 days of giveaways. So one of the things that I'm going to give away is I also have published a series of coloring books. So they are the Mantras and Affirmations coloring books, adult coloring book, like for grown-ups, not for kids, of course, Zen coloring books. But the idea is that every page is a phrase, it's a mantra or an affirmation that you color in the letters. It's not pictures so much as it's, the words are incorporated. So the idea is to be, meditative, and while you're coloring, to kind of focus on what the page says. So I'm going to have those as some of the day giveaways. You'll be able to pick 2 of the coloring books. There's a whole series, so one for every zodiac sign. So you could get like one for your sun sign and one for your moon sign, or one for your ascendant or whatever. And then there's also the very first edition was for it was Mantras and Affirmations for activists and allies. So that's one of the many things that I'll be giving away in the 14 days. But to get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this book came to be, because it's been in the works for a really long time. And so I think to start that story off, I'm going to kind of do this in 8 parts overall, live streams between here and Facebook over the next week. But basically, the original, the core of where this book comes from is a look back at my own spiritual history, and to kind of tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got to be where I am as in my own spirituality and as a creator and an author. So I grew up the child of an evangelical minister. So I grew up as a preacher's kid. I was very involved in church. I was the church organist as a teenager up through college. And, as a kid, I never really questioned my spiritual beliefs because there really weren't that many influences around me for anything different. There wasn't kind of, I knew that there are people out there who believe different things, but I didn't know them. And so I never really had anything that made me question that. But when I was in college, I did go did some traveling as a student. I was in Europe, and I had really profoundly spiritual experiences in, old Catholic buildings. It was I was an architecture student. So, cathedrals and monasteries, and there was something about those sacred spaces that that I connected with on a different level. But yeah, and some of that was, sitting alone in a monk's cell, just in solitude and with nature outside, and thinking about my journey and where I was and who I was and all of that. And that didn't happen much in my spiritual history growing up. That was not part of that context. So when I graduated college and I moved off on my own, the thought of, suddenly faced with this idea that I would need to go and find a church like the one I'd grown up in, suddenly thinking about it from the standpoint of, an outsider, somebody who wasn't part of the preacher's family, that was terrifying, and I didn't want to do it. So, and suddenly all of these things, all of these aspects of my spiritual upbringing, religious upbringing, that I hadn't ever really thought about, hadn't really questioned, suddenly I was like, oh, put on the other side of having to approach that. Now I'm wondering how much all that means to me. And it kind of turned out it didn't. So, didn't mean much. So instead, I fell back on this, there's something about this sort of more formal religious, context that I really kind of was into. So I converted. I became Catholic. And in the midst of that, there were little things that sort of opened my awareness to other potential paths. So, for instance, picking a confirmation name and kind of doing, I got into this, found out about St. Bridget, and the idea of, celebrating a saint's day, or that was totally new to me, but something really fascinating. And so I got really into that idea. I had randomly picked up a book on feng shui, and I'd started, kind of dabbling in that. There was something about praying the rosary that was meditative in a way that I hadn't really, and ritualistic, and kind of got me into connecting with that kind of practice. So later in life, a few years, when I met the woman who is now my wife, when she moved, I knew she was kind of into Wicca and Wicca adjacent things. So when I heard about a local witches pagan meetup, I thought, oh, that's a good way to get my wife some friends. Since she's new to the area, she can meet people. And so we started going, and I didn't know anything at all about kind of any of those topics, but it was sort of the perfect environment for me to learn things, because it was just literally a discussion group. It wasn't a coven. It wasn't, affiliated with any particular path. It was just a lot of different people on a lot of different pagan paths sitting around and going, well, this is what I know about candle magic. Oh, this is a different thing that I know. This is how, I've always wondered this, and people kind of sharing their knowledge. And fast forward 10 years, and now I lead that group. It's been passed to new leaders, and over those years, I, just those seeds that had been planted, I just started, learning new things and exploring new paths and exploring things, learning tarot, and, maybe do I need to learn something about astrology? Well, this is fascinating. What's alchemy? I want to learn this. And in the end, I ended up in a place where I never really intended to go, but following my, inspiration and the things that connected with my interests and the way that my brain is wired up, I ended up in a spiritual place that really fit me, and where I felt like it was fulfilling. And so part of where this book comes out of is realizing that most people don't ask themselves where they're, when you look back on your spiritual history, how do you see it? How do you ever really think about the pieces of your past paths that you still carry with you, or how those lessons shaped you, or how one thing led to another? Because the experiences that we have along the way in our lives are what make us who we are. That's the path that we have traveled. And I'm gonna wave it. So that's part of the impetus for this book that I've written, and that's part of what it delves into. That the first part of this book really digs into how your experiences shape you and how you become to be the person that you are, because the authentic self that we are has been shaped by everything that we've lived. So for, whether it's however many years that has been, but we don't really understand all the ways that it has shaped us until we've done the work to dig in and to actually get to know ourselves. And when we do that, because there were long periods of my life where it was like, oh, well, I'm not Christian anymore. So, well, Christianity. And even if I don't believe it, there are still parts of that history that I know reflect in who I am. Not that it adds legitimacy to the beliefs necessarily. It doesn't. But that there are still pieces out of that were valuable. There are pieces out of that shaped me into somebody that I ended up at some points going, oh, this isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be. This isn't this isn't something that I like being. And I need to do the work to cut through those things that I learned. But you don't get there until you've done the work to dig in and actually get to know your authentic self. So that's sort of part one of how this book came to be and what's in it. So, because if you don't know yourself, it's impossible to really fully step into not just your authenticity, but your power, your capability, your magical ability. You have to know yourself to really be fully empowered in a magical sense. So the book is called Deep Self Magic, a step-by-step roadmap to spiritual authenticity. It launches on next Thursday, October 28th. The virtual launch event will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, but there's going to be stuff going on here on my Instagram, on my Facebook page, on my TikTok, on my Twitter, we're just going to sort of blanket everything, and 14 days of giveaways, including those coloring books. So tomorrow I'm going to go live on Facebook. The day after I'll be back on Instagram. So just kind of, if you're interested in sort of following all of these and catching all of the videos, the best thing to do is to go to deepselfmagic.com and subscribe to the mailing list. I'm going to be sending out clips and stuff as we get closer to the day. So thank you very, very much for tuning in. Thank you for watching if you're watching this after the fact. And can't wait to connect with everybody over the book. Super excited to finally have this being released, because as I said, this has been in the works for a long, years. So thank you very much. I probably won't be going live quite as late in the evening next time, maybe. And I will see you on a future live.